So Lewis, here we are for the next property market update.
Yeah.
First one being filmed as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, and thank you for including me in obviously our own BMI group property update. But yeah, thanks very much.
Since we last spoke, how would you summarize the current market?
So nothing much has majorly changed. I mean, obviously we do our quarterly updates, which we're doing obviously podcast and now obviously live. Nothing much it really has transpired from the last one insofar as the volumes of sales, rentals, etc. Things have been generally quite slow, I think. We can argue it's a bit of a bear market since the middle of 2022. We saw huge growth in property prices between 2020 and 2022, driven by demand, really driven by huge interest in Gibraltar from various factors. Obviously, the main ones being low tax, highly regulated, etc., which we said for a long time. And there had been a lack of supply at that stage as well. What we've seen in the past couple of years, and obviously that's still the case, very much the case now, is a downturn, a bit of a slowdown in that market. We've seen prices over the past 24 months decrease by between 15 and 25%. And let's not forget that we saw prices increase by between 50 and 100%. So that downturn is there. But I'd say it's more, as I've said before, it's more of a realignment in the market. And that's been very much the case now for, as I've said, the past 24 months. I think we've now got to a stage where we're probably at the bottom of that curve. So I'm not necessarily seeing prices coming down any further. I think there are still some clients, vendors with high expectations still there. But generally, insofar as sales, the market is, I suppose, price sensitive. So things are selling, but it's very price sensitive, and that's obviously seen those property prices come down, not significantly, but certainly to a degree, yes.
What are some of the factors at play then at the moment with the market?
I think there's been a lot of factors which we've had and we've seen in play for the past 48 months. Most importantly, I'd say, is the agreement, which we've been waiting for now for a while. Obviously, we've been in this situation, limbo, one would call it, since 2016, although I think Gibraltar's always had hurdles to go through. So I think that's one of the main factors. We've also, in addition to that, had inflation, which has played a big part generally in confidence. With that, the translation into high interest rates, again, that's had impact on people whether looking to buy and what the real costs of financing their property might be. Confidence is generally, I think, the biggest issue that affects any market, particularly the property market, and the lack of confidence across the board, not just in Gibraltar. I think in Gibraltar we've been quite lucky that we've had an economy that still continues to do well and grow, but those confidence elements relating to the wars that we're obviously currently seeing around the world, the impact that's had on inflation, the impact that's had on interest rates, and generally that mood is obviously a big factor in play. But I'd say the biggest elephant in the room, so to speak, has to be that agreement, although we have said consistently that we believe that agreement will come through. One might argue that the agreement and all these other factors in play were good in slowing the market down. It was unsustainable to see the market and the growth that we saw in the market for that period of 24 months happen, and in the way that it happened. So that realignment and slowdown, in part, I think has been good. I think we look forward to an agreement happening soon, and I'm fairly certain that will be the case.
Are you seeing any differences between your rental market and your sales market?
Yeah, and it's a clear sign, I think, what those different markets are doing that indicate where we might be going, what we might be seeing in the future. Normally, when there's a slowdown, when we've had recessions or realignments in the market, it's normally been the rental market that gives an indication as to whether we're going to come out of this well or not. We've seen, certainly over the past 12 months, the rental market do very, very well, particularly with larger properties, in our view anyway, sort of large 1s, 2s, 3s and 4s. Prices although the rental market had been hit slightly, they've certainly held. So in previous downturns, we've seen both sales and rental prices go down. That's been the case again over the past 24 months, but less so on the rental market. And in fact, we've seen the rental prices particularly, and I exclude studios to a degree, particularly on large one beds, 2, 3s and 4s, owner-occupied properties actually hold quite well. And that, I think, is an indicator of people continuing to come to Gibraltar, continuing to be interested in Gibraltar and needing to be in Gibraltar, which is good for the economy, and it means the economy is still holding and bringing people in. And I think hopefully that will translate, once there is more confidence, into people buying those properties. But I think the fact that there's a stronger rental market than a sales market is very much, again, driven by the lack of confidence and the wait, if you like, to see where Gibraltar might be heading.
Thinking about those people who are maybe losing confidence or not sure, what advice do you have for people thinking of entering the property market?
Well, I think one might argue it's actually a good time. I mentioned before the market is quite price sensitive. Values have dropped by between 15 and 25%. And I think it's important to say in that realignment and dropping of values that actually what hasn't dropped was the highest rate per square meter achieved during the peak of 2022, in that is still applicable, but only to frontline prime properties. It's the rest of the other segments that have sort of realigned and sort of moved downwards by different percentages depending on where you are. And so far as looking to buy and you know, is it the right time or not? Look, I'm an estate agent, therefore I'm going to say it's always the right time to buy. But I think there's no question that we've seen, and it's visible to see the decreases in prices over the past 24 months. And we are certainly optimistic moving forward, given the conditions that I've explained already for Gibraltar and its economy. And therefore, I would say that probably there are some good opportunities now if you're looking to buy. Obviously, it depends what your profile is. Are you a first-time buyer, you're an investor, etc. And therefore, we can advise accordingly in that regard. But I think there are certainly opportunities in the market today for anyone who's looking to buy, whichever profile you're under.
What are some of those opportunities that are available now?
Well, look, we've been through a situation over the past couple of years where interest rates climbed to a degree that it was no longer interesting, for example, or less interesting for investors to go into the buy-to-let market. Historically, Gibraltar offered 4.5% to 5.5% yields on rental properties. When we got to a stage suddenly where banks were offering fixed-term deposits of 4.5%, 5.5%. That's changing a little bit now. So the interest rates have come down. The fixed-term deposits have come down to between 3.5% and 4%. And we are in a situation where, because prices have come down and rents have maintained themselves in certain segments, you are getting, we're pretty much back to 4.2%, 4.3%. And also you've got the capital gain. So that's one interesting aspect. I think from anyone looking to come to Gibraltar, whether it be with the economy and so far as gaming, financial services, all the different sectors we've got, as much as a lot of people who come to Gib will consider prices generally quite high, they're certainly more attractive price ranges than we've had historically, certainly between 2020 and 2022. Look, from an affordable housing perspective, from a low-end perspective, yes, we accept that prices in Gibraltar are quite high. From a Gibraltarian perspective, if you are Gibraltarian or local, who've been here for more than 3-4 years, you are in a position where you can enjoy purchasing in the affordable sector. And I think that, again, that will always be there. But generally, I think we've got a number of factors that make it attractive for people to look to invest in Gibraltar.
So anyone who's listening or watching us, what would we be looking out for in the next 3 to 6 months then?
Boring as it might sound, I think a little bit much of the same, with the difference of I would expect to have seen an agreement happen in that period. I think an agreement will certainly underpin the market, will create confidence, which we need, and at least will give Gibraltar a vision forward. I mean, one of the biggest problems Gibraltar's had historically, 25, 30 years since I've been around, certainly in the market, is that lack of stability to say to a client, this is what you've got and this is what you're going to get long term. There's always been that insecurity. So I think that's going to be important in seeing how Gibraltar flows through over the next 3 to 6 months. I'm not of the view, as other people might be, that we are going to necessarily see the market boom. I think there is margin to see the market continue to grow and possibly boom medium to longer term. But I don't think it'll happen within 3 to 6 months. I think that needs to be fed in. I think there's great opportunities if there's an agreement, and when there's an agreement rather, to see many high-value clients, particularly from the UK and other jurisdictions, but particularly from the UK, looking at jurisdictions once again like Gibraltar. Bear in mind, Gibraltar, I think, has been sidelined insofar as a jurisdiction to come to because of these insecurities and uncertainties. If we have a little bit more confidence and security, I think we'll see some big numbers, I think, of people potentially looking to come to Gibraltar to invest as their businesses and to reside in Gibraltar insofar as what it delivers.
Okay. What are some of those kind of other opportunities? Any off-plan developments that you are working with at the moment?
Yeah, so we've talked about off-plan for a long time. I mean, it's been with us for always, really. From the first off-plan development that we did back in 2000, Sunset Close and Europa. We've been involved in a great many of them. I'd say probably, I'm not a lion's share, but close to a lion's share, certainly up to about 50% of new developments in Gibraltar over the past 25, 30 years. There's a lot of flying a kite, I think, a lot of developments that have been put out there in the hope of trying to launch and get it sold. I think the fact that we're in an environment, in a stage in the economy, in the property market, where things have been slow after the boom that we've discussed over many occasions, has led to a lot of people holding back, understandably and rightly so. So really the only two major developments that have actually over the past couple of years really taken off and actually been launched and put to market and started construction has been Midtown, the last phase of Midtown, and One Bayside, which we were involved in. What's interesting with those developments, particularly with One Bayside, which we're involved with in heavily, actually, is the pricing. We really, for the first time in many years, actually went in and undercut the market in order to attract buyers, ideally owner-occupiers, and they were generally larger apartments, large ones, very large 2s, 3s and 4s. That was done specifically and for a reason, because that's where we felt the market would be interested in the development, but it was important to get the sales we needed to actually get the development off the ground, which we did because we undercut the market as we had to, and actually it's now well underway insofar as construction is concerned. The other development that we've been involved in, which is at this stage quite low-key, it's a very different animal, if you like, to the sort of high density developments, although One Bayside is only 57 units, is Europa Walks. But that's villas and townhouses. It's a very different strategy insofar as selling is concerned. And we hope to actually do some video walkthroughs on progress and construction there. It's a self-financed development, so there's no need for a certain amount of properties to be sold there to develop. So more to come on that. And then so far as, other developments which are there or thereabouts but haven't actually got off the ground or started in selling, I think, again, expectations there from developers might be quite high and therefore may not be met at this stage. And so far as price expectations they may or may not have. I think the other issue we've had is a lot of developments we've seen coming through previously or being proposed includes a lot of studios. That's been something that we've been concerned about for a long time in terms of who really is the end user here. So yeah, I think a lot to see over the next 3, 6, 12 months insofar as how the economy progresses with all these confidence factors that we're talking about, based upon the agreement, and then see how that plays out insofar as new developments and off-plan developments coming through. But at this stage, much as it sounds boring, very little to talk about, very little to see because of the period that we've been through.
And the word confidence comes through so much. So
yeah, I think it's important. It's important in anything. Yeah, and you know, not that, you know, I think I've always said this about Gib as if you like a finale, a positive finale, is that regardless of the downturns we've seen worldwide, we've just got this ability in Gibraltar, whether it be because our size, the way things are managed, the economy and how that's managed, to come out of hurdles very well, and actually, whilst we're going through hurdles, actually not be affected as widely and largely as other economies are. And I think that says a great deal about actually where we are at the moment. An interesting fact actually is, you know, when you have recessions, downturns, you end up having a lot of repossessions in property markets. They just literally don't exist in Gibraltar. Finally as well, just to make comment on it, we've also been quite lucky in Gibraltar with high value clients, family offices as well in Gibraltar, who've taken a view long term under difficult conditions to invest in Gibraltar. So as much as things have been quite quiet, we've been quite fortunate to deal with some big high value sales, which obviously will remain nameless, but they have been quite substantial. And that's come through from people who are in Gibraltar, not necessarily Gibraltarian, but have confidence long term. So they're taking a longer term view. And so far as the larger market is concerned, I think it's been weak because it's people just waiting to see what's going to happen.
We'll see over the next few months.
We shall see. And we look forward to, obviously, our next quarterly update, hopefully in the summertime.